All right, we're back here at the Wausau Police Department, continuing in our attempt to have a podcast, and it dawned on us that I did one being the new chief and talking a little bit about my experience in history, and we've invited Jeremy Kopp, who went through the process and became the next fire chief about the same time I became the chief. So let's see, you were late last year, December
18th, yep.
So this is our opportunity to get to know him a little bit. For those of you that don't know, there's always a little bit of friendly competition between the fire department and the police department. I think we can start with just acknowledging that I have a better haircut than you do.
Well, that's arguable. I mean, mine's definitely more comfortable and more aerodynamic. So
aerodynamic, I believe. It's got a little shine to it.
Fast.
That's good. That's good. I mean, the day's getting closer for me. So thanks for being here. We always have a lot of fun. Anybody that doesn't realize, I call the fire chief all the time and be like, hey, what would you do here? And vice versa. So we talk to each other probably just about every day.
I think so.
Trying to figure out how to make these machines function here.
Yeah, and I think it's unique in Wausau in the fact that our departments get along so well, and I think it starts at the top and works its way down. I mean, we work together every day in the field, and right down to our brand new firefighters and police officers, all the way up to the chiefs, and being able to work together and have that sort of partnership, I think not only helps our departments but helps our community and instills that level of confidence that we get from our citizens here.
Well, that sounds like a very professional answer, like you had that written down. And sometimes I just call up to get over on you and have a little fun.
There's always that, yeah.
But I think that adds to the relationship between our departments that we can have that camaraderie. You know, we will continue on Tuesday. We have our community thank you cookout,
yes,
which you and I have been tasked over the years with grilling. I don't know how many brats and hot dogs, but it's
hundreds
and hundreds and hundreds of those.
I look forward to that.
I'm glad that we moved it from the police department to the fire department. So if we have a giant fireball of a grill, there's at least professionals in the room to help address that. So let me kind of go back to the beginning here, because I'm not sure everybody really knows that much about you. I know that as I go through town, you know a lot of people here. Everyone seems to know who you are. But how long have you worked for the Wausau Fire Department?
Well, I'm about to finish my 20th year at the end of this year here, so I'll be here 20 years at the Wausau Fire Department. Before that, I was a volunteer at Weston Fire Department for 10 years, so I've been kind of in the fire game for 30 years. Got hired here 20 years ago and kind of worked my way through the ranks, and a little unorthodox in the fact that I started as a fire inspector instead of a firefighter paramedic, and really just became the place that I knew would be a career for me. I started out going to MATC for my associate's degree when I was in my early 20s. And during that time, I got an internship at the Fitchburg Fire Department, where I lived and was able to be a firefighter, go to school, and live at the fire station. It was then and only then that I realized that I didn't want to just be a volunteer firefighter. I wanted to do that for a living, because sleeping next to a fire truck was one of the coolest things and one of the best experiences I ever had. And that led me to applying and finally getting hired in the city of Wausau, where I was born and raised. So
you came on, I mean, I remember when you came on to the fire department. That probably speaks to the age of both of us. But tell me the first thing you did here, you were a fire inspector. And I remember at that time I was a detective here, and when we'd have a fire and we needed to investigate the cause and origin of it, I recall times where we're like shoveling out burned out buildings to try and figure out what the cause of that fire was. But what else does a fire inspector do here? Like, what were those first couple of years?
Well, the origin and cause, that's the glory part of it, right? That's the fun part, figuring out.
And that's the difference between a firefighter and a police officer, shoveling burnt building. You guys are like, that's the glory. And we're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not always fun, but it's fun for us to try to figure out where it started and why it started, right? Shoveling burnt out buildings when it's 20 below zero, or when it's a day like today when it's 90 degrees and 100% humidity, isn't fun for anybody. But it's a job that needs to be done. And I think, early on in my career, that was always done separately. And I think, my predecessor, Dave DeSantis, and some of your veterans that have now retired here at the police department decided that we should be doing these things together, and that's when it all kind of started. Once I was hired at the Wausau Fire Department, otherwise it was always a separate job between the two. So I mean, getting together and doing that, working as a team, figuring out origin and cause is what I think is the glory. But what I really enjoyed about that job, and you asked what else we did, we go out and inspect every building in the city of Wausau that's either a commercial building or residential buildings that are 3 units and up. So the only thing that we don't do fire inspection is single families and duplex homes. I really got to know a lot about our community by doing those inspections. And I just got to learn a lot about what all goes on in a lot of these different businesses that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do. So not only are we going out and doing our job, but it was just a fantastic experience to learn some of those things just by the nature of doing our job. So I think that part was really cool too. That's not for everybody. I know a lot of firefighters don't like doing inspections, but I really enjoyed it. And that was one of the big things we did as fire inspectors was do those inspections twice a year. If there were violations, follow up on them and make sure the corrections were being made. So, fire investigations, fire inspections, and, just showing up in sometimes we got little petty court things and things like that to take care of on a lot smaller scale than you guys do at the PD, obviously.
So you were a fire inspector, and I mean, maybe we'll come back to this later in the podcast too, but I heard you say something recently, and we'll talk about the community care paramedic position and how that's preventative, but maybe speak to like how many fires used to occur like historically, and then fire prevention became a thing and the role of fire inspectors and how that's impacted what we see now. Like the reality is there aren't that many fires compared to where there were before. And what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, and that's nationwide. And a lot of people that maybe are our age, and even the ones that are younger, if maybe it's a little education opportunity here, but in the 70s, fires, were taking a great toll on a lot of businesses and a lot of communities, and taking lives for that matter. So it was an initiative across America as let's start preventing fires. So fire prevention became a thing. It was never a thing before the early 70s. It was just bucket brigades, fire departments, and hope you didn't have one, right? Prevention was unknown. So we started finding ways to prevent fires. And a lot of that came in terms of codes, designing building codes, designing fire codes, making people follow the codes so there'd be less fires, getting fire departments out there to educate and communicate with their communities in order to prevent fires. And it just became one of those things that it just kept growing and growing over the years. And now fire prevention is almost second nature to people. They're used to seeing us in the schools, talking to children in the grade schools every October. Everybody out there knows that October is Fire Prevention Month. And just going out and making sure that we do those things every day is such a great opportunity, but a lot of people don't understand where it derived from, and that's the reason we have less and less fires. The hard part about that is knowing how many you actually prevented, because it's not a measurable thing, which can be frustrating. But we do know that fires have gone down over the years, every year since the 70s, and that's nationwide, and it's kind of a cool thing. And I think that's what you're starting to see now is EMS is on the rise. And I know you said we're going to talk about community care paramedic in a little bit, but EMS is on the rise, and I think they're going to take what we're doing is looking, and the fire service is taking a page out of that fire prevention book from the 70s and starting that with EMS in the current day.
Okay. So we'll come back to,
right,
because it's the current issue of the day, trying to get this community care paramedic up and running. But I know what your career followed, but when you left fire inspection, what'd you do next?
Well, there was a long time there where I was it was a little different for the Wausau Fire Department because they never had this before, but we were short-staffed even back then a little bit, and what they were doing was in the summer times when we were short-staffed and there was vacations to use and the crews were short, they were moving me from Monday through Friday to the line crews. So I was working 24-hour shifts with the firefighters and the paramedics, and there were still, and there still are, some of us that were EMT basics and not paramedics. So I would spend time riding a basic ambulance, sometimes out of Station 3. Sometimes I was the firefighter on one of the fire engines out of Station 2 or even Central, which back then we called the house dog. So my job was essentially to take care of a lot of the errands and a lot of the things that people that were committed to some of the vehicles didn't have time to do or weren't permitted to do because they couldn't get that far away from a vehicle. We don't do that anymore. We don't have a house dog, but it was kind of neat. I was seeing all sides of the department and doing all these different positions.
Hold on.
Yeah.
What breed of house dog were you?
What breed? Well, I almost have to say Dalmatian, right? As much as I don't want to because I've never had one. I mean, if it's the fire service, so it's got to be a Dalmatian. I don't know what that says about me because I heard Dalmatians are mean. I don't think I'm mean, but yeah.
Fair enough.
We'll go with that. So that's what was happening for a few years. And I don't even remember what year it would have been where, I was promoted to lieutenant. I was a lieutenant in fire inspections in the Fire Inspection Bureau. And then we hired a new chief for the first time in my career by the name of Tracy Kajawa. And she brought in this whole new aspect that I'd never really thought much about or was really privy to in the past, and that was leadership. And she really got me going in leadership and got me really involved in leadership classes and learning more about leadership and becoming a better leader. And as I did that, I decided I wanted to go back to school, and I started going back to school. I decided to go get my bachelor's degree. And then before you know it, a battalion chief spot was coming up, and I decided, hey, why can't I take a shot at that? And I did, and I got shot down the first time, and the second time it came up, I went for a promotion, and I got it. Became a battalion chief, where to this day I still say is the greatest position at the Wausau Fire Department because it's the only chief that works 24 hours a day and works the shift schedule. And
I mean, just so people would understand, a battalion chief, you'd correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 3 firehouses. Each are staffed with ambulances and fire engines, and they're strategically positioned throughout the city. The battalion chief is responsible for all 3 of them and everything that goes on, all the calls for service to the fire department for that 24-hour period of time. So they're supervising people and calls that are taking place everywhere. And then the lieutenants are responsible for those individual firehouses.
Exactly. I don't know if I could have said it better myself. We run a paramilitary.
I'm pretty good at this, apparently.
You are very good at podcasts, almost like the Kelsey brothers here, you and I, right?
Well, they're a riot, and I think they get paid more than me.
But, so the battalion chief, there's a battalion chief on each crew. There's 3 crews that work 24-hour shifts that cover the city 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And, so just like you said, they oversee the 3 houses, and there's a lieutenant in each house that oversees the firefighter, paramedics, and engineers below them. So we run a chain of command style paramilitary organization. And I really enjoyed that position a lot. And that position, not only is involved in management decisions, but is also involved in day-to-day tactics and day-to-day responses to emergencies throughout the city. And I really enjoyed that position a lot. I've enjoyed all my positions at the Wausau Fire Department, but that one was unique enough in the fact that I really enjoyed it the most. Then you follow up with the question, well, why'd you leave? Well, I didn't leave for the fact that I thought there was a better position. I left because I wanted to keep bettering myself and make sure that I leave Wausau Fire Department better than I found it. And I've always believed that I've had something to offer each position that I went to, and I decided to go for the next promotion and go for deputy chief. So spent a little time as a deputy chief, and was fortunate enough to become the chief of the department last December. So that's kind of my rundown of my career at the Wausau Fire Department over the years, but I've seen so many changes, and I've seen so many things change with morale and the way we do things and how we include our members, and much like the police department. And over the years, I think we took a few pages from the police department because you guys were kind of leading the way and changing the mindset of how we're viewed and how we view each other and how the community views us and how we view the community. So I think that's what works so well here in the city of Wausau between our two departments.
Well, I know that I thought I understood what being the chief meant. I was the deputy chief here for a little over 5 years, and I'm like, oh, well, I get it. And I didn't. I mean, there was a lot to learn, still learning. I know you find yourself in the same boat, but part of, like, the buck stops with you now, and that's part of it, and the responsibility to our elected policymakers and leaders in trying to accomplish. We're not short on good ideas and
Right.
different things to come up with. It's how to get those things taken care of. And I think people have seen some of the things we're trying to do with the police department, but like, what are your priorities right now? What's going on at the firehouse that you're trying to get done, and why?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many big things, and then what, like you said, same thing. I thought I knew what was all entailed to be the chief, and I am learning every day, just like you said you were. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming. Sometimes it's a little bit of a mindset of, man, this really is happening. I'm here now, and it's satisfying, but it's stressful at the same time, right? For us at the fire department, some of the big initiatives we moved in. I mean, I'm following two chiefs that did some pretty great things at the fire department, and I think I've taken some very good lessons from both of them. And I also have my own initiatives, and I think everybody has to understand that no matter where they are, you have to believe in yourself and believe in some of your own ideas and moving forward with those. And some of those were going for more grants, and we've accomplished a lot of grants already in 6 months. Received a lot of grants at the fire department in the last 6 months. But some of the big things are, we're in a building that we've just overgrown. It's too small for us. There's not enough parking. There's not enough room for our trucks. There's definitely not enough room for our personnel. And one of the biggest initiatives that I'm moving forward with is building a new fire station. And I'm sure people have heard some rumors about that, and that the city has purchased the floral property just to the south of us here, and hopefully one day we see a new fire station there. But there's a lot of different hoops to jump to, and a lot of things that need to be accomplished in order to get that done. And that's one of those things that takes a lot of time. But one thing that always jumps in front of that is personnel, right? Taking care of personnel and making sure that we got our staffing there. And right now we don't. We're short on staff, and it's resulting in a lot of overtime and a lot of people putting in a lot of hours. And so that's become a priority of mine right now, is figuring out a new way and creative ways to recruit people. And we're doing some pretty cool things, but it's also about retaining people.
So there was right about the time you were becoming chief, or right before, I might maybe have the timeline screwed up, but there was an assessment of the fire department staffing wise, and really you guys hadn't added staff
in 50 years.
50 years. And so kind of the number that came up was we need to add 12 firefighter paramedics to the Wausau Fire Department. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot that goes into funding and getting approval for 12 additional firefighters. You'd think that would be the hard part, but it's actually finding 12 people that meet the standards that are your expectations and are qualified for that position. Were you able to hire the 12?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's been kind of a roller coaster ride for the past year and a half when we got that permission. And no, we have not hit that number yet. So we went from 62 to 74 staffing between our three stations in the city of Wausau, and we've yet to hit that 74 number. And now I'd argue that it's 75 because we're adding a community care paramedic to our team. So no, we weren't able to hit that number. We have done some creative things and gotten that number closer, but over this past 6 months, we've unfortunately had some untimely resignations, and we've had some retirements, and those things are happening quicker than we're able to onboard people. And that's exactly why we're having trouble now. What I don't want is people to construe that as people are leaving the department because they're unhappy, because that's not what's happening. Retirements is one thing, but when people resign, it's for other reasons. And when we do our exit interviews, what we're learning is a lot of them, come here from different communities, and now they find opportunities to go back home to be closer to their families, closer to their wife's families or their husband's families, and get on a full-time department somewhere where it's a little bit more convenient for their family.
I've noticed a change for the police department, and it's just part of doing business. But tell me if you agree that 25 years ago, you got hired in a department, your mind was in a place where I'm going to be here till I retire. And it just seems to me like there's more opportunities. There's more recruiting amongst police departments of sworn officers already, or certifiable officers that can laterally transfer. And we're no different. We like to see lateral transfers, people with experience coming here. But it certainly seems like there's less of once I get hired, I'm there for the next 30 years.
That was like that in the fire service forever until, the recent history. And, now I refer to it a lot as a shell game. There's generations now, especially in the fire service, have the opportunity, and I'll call it an opportunity, because if I was younger, I don't know that I wouldn't have taken the same opportunity to go try different communities and see where I fit best. When we got hired, you and I, or even our generation, you didn't have these opportunities. It was hard enough to get into a department, more or less just move around to whatever one you wanted to go try next. For instance, a lot of the firefighter paramedics that were hired the same year as I was, there was one opening and there was 120 applicants. Right now we have 6 openings and I'm lucky to get 3 or 4 applicants. And, as frustrating as that is on the chief's side, looking at it from the other angle, the young people have different opportunities nowadays than we had when we were younger. For better or worse, I'm not sure, but either way, they're different opportunities, and we need to be able to wrap our heads around it as leaders of our departments and figure out how to find the answer to it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Let's take a shameless plug here for the hundreds of thousands of people who are watching or listening, right, Ethan? Ideally, maybe at some point this will get monetized 10. And we'll be able to fund positions with the money we get from our podcast. But with that being said, talk me through, maybe someone's wondering hey, that sounds like a good deal. You're in high school or you're one of these young adults who's trying to find their way. How long does it take to become a qualified applicant? So it's a little different for us. We have certain college credits. My understanding for you guys is you get firefighter 1, then firefighter 2, and a paramedic certification, and
then you can apply.
And then you can apply. So, and if you have those things and you're a person of good character and a hard worker, the likelihood is you'll get the opportunity to be a firefighter paramedic. So, how long does it take someone to get firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and paramedic? Which my understanding is those are programs offered through the technical schools in Wisconsin.
They are, and it's a kind of a loaded question because it depends on what you got going on in life. There are people out there that if they don't have a family or a full-time job that they have to answer to, they can get that all done in a year. But that's being very aggressive. Getting that all done in a year and being able to afford it are 2 things that have to line up correctly. And how many people have that opportunity? Not as many as we'd like to think. So you have someone who's holding down a full-time job and chasing their dream of becoming a full-time firefighter paramedic one day. It might take them 2 years just to get their paramedic, because a lot of classes offered through the technical schools are either 1-year programs or 2-year programs. And a 2-year program is just a little bit easier in case you have a full-time job or a family to take care of. And then throw on the firefighter 1 and the firefighter 2. Those can be done in the course of 3 months apiece. So if you overlap them, you can get them done all in 2 years. And if you do your paramedic in 2 years, then it's going to be another 6 months before you have fire 1 and fire 2.
But if someone said, I'm all in, this sounds like what I want to be. Number one, I know that they could show up at the fire department and say, I'm interested in this as a career, and you guys are going to give them the time, a day, to show them around and talk to them about what the culture and the lifestyle of a firefighter is. But if they're all in, work really hard for a year, and this could be your new career.
Yeah, and I think that's a great start and a great idea, and that's what we've been doing traditionally. But what we've changed, and what I want to allude to a little bit here, is now we're starting to do things different in order to recruit people, in order to get the people the opportunities that they might not have because they have a full-time job, because they have a family and they don't have the time or maybe don't have the funding to go get these things and to chase a dream that they always had. We're working tightly with especially our North Central Technical College here in town to start an apprenticeship program. We're looking at getting funding and grants to start an apprenticeship program and have live-in opportunities, much like I had in Fitchburg, where you'd live at the fire station, work certain shifts, and go to school and get paid for it and learn while you're on the job, much like a lot of the trades out there. The trades are leading the way with finding people because they're paying them to learn the trade. And I think that the fire department should follow and learn from that a little bit. And that's what we're trying to do, is find new ways to give people the opportunities to become something that they always wanted to be, but never really had the time or the maybe the funding to do it. So,
I mean, one of the things that always adds to the competitiveness between the fire department and the police department,
big red trucks.
Well, I mean, you do have big red trucks. Our squads go faster. We're always there first, but
Always.
there's
I
going to
like
be a
that
but.
plug. Good work.
Being a firefighter paramedic is one of the only jobs on the planet where you get paid to sleep. Now, you run the risk that sleep can be interrupted at any point in time, but
And it will be. But
I've never had a job where they would pay me to sleep.
It's almost hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. But yeah, in order to be ready at any moment, especially when you're covering your community 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, there's the component of rest that comes into play, right? And there's a lot of different countries outside the U.S. that pay their 8-hour employees to take naps. So I don't know.
Don't tell anyone that.
Say we'll have to delete that. But yeah, I mean, to have an opportunity where you're basically coming to work to not only make a difference in the community, but to live and do things at work as a second family that a lot of careers and jobs don't do. Do we clean our own bathrooms and our own toilets? Yeah, every day. Do we cook together? We do. We eat together. We cook together. We get to sleep at work. You have your downtimes, and there's even opportunities out there where, you'll see a couple firefighters throwing a basketball around at a basketball hoop. So you need to unwind, and just like a lot of your police officers here, they see a lot of things in the course of a day or in the course of a career that you need to be able to take care of. And some of those things are blowing off steam with your workout hour, going down in the gym at the fire station and working out, playing a little basketball, playing a little horse, doing those sorts of things. So, taking care of our people and making sure that they retire or they go home at the end of the day mentally and physically healthy is one of the most important things for me as a fire chief.
No, I agree. I think, the same's true here. So if someone is listening to this, one of the hundreds of thousands of people that are just going to be like, I can't turn it off. Talk about in a 24-hour period of time. Obviously, if something's on fire, they're responding in any moment in that period of time. Or if somebody needs medical attention, the paramedics and the ambulances are going out. But how do you break up a 24? Is there a certain amount of hours that are work and training, and then there's a certain amount of hours that are, like you said, you get an hour to work out? But what does that 24-hour period look like?
Yeah, so they're all a little different, but I'll speak for the city of Wausau's 24-hour period, and I think it's a great recruiting tool also, because a lot of people see us on social media and see the things that we're doing, but I think you bring up a good question is, what does a 24-hour day look like? Our shift changes at 6:45 in the morning, so what you'll see at all three stations at 6:30 in the morning is one crew getting ready to leave and one crew coming on, and they'll sit down and have a cup of coffee with the person that's in the seat that they're about to take and get a rundown from the last 24 hours. It could be, what medications are you short on, what tire on the rig is low on air, what needs fuel, all these different things that they need to talk about and need to come into prepared for, right? So they spend 15 minutes having coffee, and for the most part having coffee. Not everyone drinks coffee, but you'd be surprised. There's not many that don't. I didn't until I worked here, I can tell you that, and now I can't live without it.
And all your hair fell out.
And all my hair fell out. That's true. Can we blame that on coffee?
Sure.
Or stress?
No, I think both.
Okay. So that happens, and then you get at 6:45, the battalion chief will take charge and do a conference call and give the expectations of the crew for the day. From there, at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 8, everyone goes out and gets their rigs ready to go, gets their gear ready to go, gets all their equipment in shape and ready to doff. Make sure your air tanks are ready. Make sure everything's ready, essentially, to respond.
Is that where
emergency.
They're putting their turnout gear? I see it sitting when for anybody that doesn't realize, the fire department used to sell soda way cheaper than here at the police department in their machine. And so we got the code and we could go sneak over into the bay and get a Mountain Dew for less. And outside of every apparatus is gear just sitting on the floor so they can kick off their shoes, jump into the boots, pull the suspenders up, throw on a jacket, and away they go. So that's what they're doing during that hour.
That's what they're doing is getting their trucks and their gear and their equipment ready, depending on what they're assigned to for the day. I want to rewind a little bit about the soda machine thing, because anytime the police would come over to our side to save that 25 cents on a can of soda, when we question them, they'll straight up tell you that our soda was colder and that was the only reason, which we all knew better. It wasn't just because it was colder. It's because it was cheaper.
Well, without a doubt. So the fire department always seems to get all like, hey, new trucks, new station. Now you want another new station.
And amongst other things, yeah. Yep.
You don't get what you don't ask for.
Exactly. So, well, getting back to the duty day before we leave people hanging too long, right? So you're doing that from 7 to 8. From 8 to 9 is what a lot of departments, a lot of career departments, not only in the state of Wisconsin, but across the nation, don't have, is a built-in workout hour. We put so much emphasis on being healthy and being ready to respond in the city of Wausau that we have a workout hour that's mandatory every day from 8 to 9 in all 3 stations. So our crews are working out, whether they're on a workout plan through Tracy, our hired physical therapist, to something that they're training for, or just a competitive nature between our firefighters of who can lift more, right? And you'll see that every day. But from 8 to 9, they're working out, they're stretching, they're getting ready for the day. And then at 9 o'clock is your break time. So now you're getting showered up, cleaned up over your break, and now your duty day starts. That's where our training division chiefs and our battalion chiefs have your day laying out for what you're going to train on. And that changes every month and every day depending on what time of year it is. If it's swift water rescue training, if it's cold water rescue training, if it's confined space training, if it's fire training, EMS training. I mean, the list goes on and on. Gone are the days where the fire department just responds to EMS and fire. We respond to everything, right?
So do you train? I mean, if I'm a firefighter, paramedic working for you, should I count on some kind of training every single day?
Every day. Yep. Every single day we're training because we need to be ready. And no matter if you trained on something 100 times or one time, there's always something you can learn from it and get better at. And it could be as simple as being quicker or just learning better ways to do certain things. Maybe it's getting better at tying knots. So, I mean, I could give examples all day long, but that's what we do. And unfortunately, training gets interrupted always because number one priority, like you alluded to earlier, is responding to emergencies. So when the tones drop, we drop everything and we leave. There's a timeline, an expectation of how quick you can get your gear on and fully dressed and on air, and we want everybody to be able to achieve that in under 60 seconds. We want our ambulances out the door in 60 seconds or less. We want our engines out the door in 80 seconds or less, and we want to be on scene anywhere in the city of Wausau in under 4 minutes. Those are NFPA goals, standards, if that we'd like to try to chase.
Hey, we're on a podcast?
Yeah. NFPA, you want me to do? Okay, yeah, you're right.
National Fire.
You're almost there. Protection Agency.
There you go.
There it is. And they got all kinds of different standards and different things that fire departments should try to follow. And that's one of the things that we try to do is follow NFPA standards. Very hard to meet sometimes, but you can do it if you work hard at it. So that's what we're doing. We're training and responding to emergencies no matter what we're doing. Emergencies come first, obviously. And then you're training until lunchtime. At lunchtime, traditionally, our engineer has prepared the meals for the crews at their stations, and they sit down together as a second family, if you will, and they eat lunch. And at 1 o'clock, we start back up again with training. We train till 4 o'clock, and from 4 to 4:30, which seldom is done in a half an hour, but that is time to get our trucks shined up because there's a lot of pride that firefighters have in their trucks, and there's a lot of pride that the community has in our trucks.
Now, if we took it from instead of 4 to 4:30 and we made it 4 to 5, and officers were to just swing the squads in there, think they could shine those up for us?
Yeah,
I'm looking for a commitment from the fire chief to the police department right now that you guys will detail our squads for us.
And I told you we have a really good working relationship between our firefighters and our police officers, but I got a feeling that would change it in a quick hurry. But it's not something that I couldn't bring up in the next crew meeting, but I'm not willing to, in front of all the firefighters, paramedics that are listening right now, make a commitment that deep.
Well, I would like to know what the answer was when, hey guys, like, we're all on the same team here, and the police department would like to know if you're willing to clean and detail squads every day for us. I'd like to know what the answer is.
No. It's no.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I don't know if you looked out your windows here, but there's squad cars everywhere.
From
4 to 5, that would take till midnight.
You wouldn't do them all every day, but if we just rotated them through.
Okay. Well, you should drop a proposal, and I'll take a good hard look at it.
That means the answer's no. I understand. I can read through the lines. Yeah. Okay, so it's 4:30. The fire engines are shiny.
Everything's clean. The community wants clean trucks. We want clean trucks, and we're there. And now it's 4:30, like you said. The greatest time of the day for a firefighter paramedic, because now the schedule's out the window. Now it's be ready to respond to any emergency that comes in and meet those timelines, right? So it might be your family coming in to visit you after 4:30. It might be a little picnic with your family outside the back of the fire station at the picnic table. It could be making phone calls to your mom and dad that maybe live out of town, or any family member for that matter. It could be taking care of some schoolwork because you're going back to school to better yourself. It could be watching TV with, I keep saying second family because that's what we are in the fire service and at the fire department. It could be watching a movie with your second family, making some popcorn, unwinding from a stressful day, even though you know it's going to get interrupted at any second, right? And then it's after 9 o'clock, is when your first opportunity to put lights out and try to get a little bit of sleep in your bunk room. And then again until 6 o'clock in the morning until the next shift change. Now that sounds very simple, right? Sounds like, well, that's a lot of free time. It sounds like a lot of free time, but it is interrupted all the time, and it's hardly ever much free time. To get through a full movie would be darn near impossible here, but it's worth an attempt. And luckily, our firefighters respect and enjoy each other's company so much that they'll put the movie on pause and wait for them to get back from the call before we finish the movie.
That doesn't work in my own house. I don't know how it would work with a bunch of grown adults.
Well, and like you said, we're dating ourselves a little bit. So I'm talking back to when I was on the line, which was already, I don't even know, 4 years ago since I was a battalion chief. So it could be different. They could be playing checkers. I don't even know. What I do know is they enjoy watching all the 40-hour chiefs leave at the end of the day, so it's a little bit less stress on them, right?
No, I can appreciate that. Early in our conversation, we brought up community care paramedic, and like I've been involved talking to you about what that is and understand it, but I'm not sure the average member of the community would understand. Like they're a paramedic, we have paramedics, and so like I think what would be interesting to me is to understand the difference between an EMT, a paramedic, and a community care paramedic, and where their goals are similar and where they're different. And like I know the answer to this already, but if I'm a Wausau resident, I'm pretty pleased that if I call for an ambulance, there's a paramedic responding, and they're able to provide treatments that we couldn't before Wausau switched to paramedics.
Right. Yeah, and Wausau did that 20 years ago already, the year before I got hired. So an EMT, and a paramedic are similar in the fact that they're providing first aid, or they're providing some sort of aid to anyone having a medical emergency. The difference between an EMT and a paramedic is a paramedic has a lot more tools, if you will, at their disposal, and that would be any sort of medications or any sort of advanced treatment that you would get in the hospital. Now you can get it in your house in the back of an ambulance before you get to the hospital. So early treatment has proven to help people more and more than just transporting them and getting to a doctor as fast as you can. So that's where the paramedicine surpasses anything else is getting treatment and getting the right medications on board and different things you can do for a patient before taking them to the hospital, and saving that time of waiting for a nurse or a physician to take care of that for the patient. Where the big difference is then when you start talking about a community care paramedic, someone who is also a paramedic, but what we're missing the boat on in all of our communities is we are so strapped for time and getting ready for the next emergency. We don't have time to go over all the different things and really get to know our patients and what's causing these issues that they might be having medically and what kind of handle they have on their own disease. And what's happening is we're just picking them up, we're handling what we see, and we're taking care of the now and transporting them to the hospital, and then they're getting what they need from there, and they're being discharged. But do they fully understand what they have going on with themselves? And what we're finding is they don't, and nobody has really the time to do it because the healthcare system is so bogged down. 911 system is so bogged down because you're transporting and you're getting ready for the next call, right? Same thing at our hospitals. Finding empty beds now is a challenge. Getting people in from the ER admitted to another floor for an overnight stay is a challenge. And what this community care paramedic can do is really get to know the people in our community, the people that need their help, and get them to understand, what medications they need to take, how often they need to take them, are they taking the right dosages, and essentially keeping them from having to be transported in a 911 ambulance and keep them from being admitted into the hospital unnecessarily. And there's a lot of people out there that they maybe were told take, this much dosage of this medication for 1 week and then cut it in half a week later. And how many people forget that? I'd probably forget that. And now you're going to have someone to help you facilitate and be able to connect the dots between a family physician and between any other stakeholder or any other entity that we can reach out and work with, whether it's the health department, whether it's the police department, whether it's, I'm blank right now, but there's so many different, the ADRC, right? All these different things that we can put in play and help each other out to make sure that the people in our community understand what they got going on and keep them safe in their own home and keep them in their home as long as they possibly can before they might need to, go to another facility at some point.
I mean, I know at the police department, like one of the lines that I heard when I first got hired was, we spend 90% of our time on 10% of the population. So over the years, it seems to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there are patients with serious medical concerns, something like might be a diabetic, for example, who's not managing that diabetes, that is almost on a first-name basis with the paramedics because they're calling for an ambulance so frequently or having an ambulance called on their behalf, that this community care paramedic, by being able to proactively go out and meet with them and check blood sugars and now I'm talking about things I don't know anything about, but the fact of the matter is help them stay on top of that illness or issue or disease that, one, keeps them from having to call an ambulance and just has them live a healthier, more fulfilling life at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about fire prevention before, and we talked, that went from nothing to getting into homes and getting into apartments and getting into businesses and looking for all these hazards to keep fires from happening. Well, we're going to essentially be doing the same thing in EMS. What can we do to keep them from needing to use the 911 system? What can we do to help them not be admitted in the hospital? And a lot of it is preventable. It's preventable in the fact that we talked a lot about meds, right? Taking meds, but it goes all the way down to how are they taking care of themselves? What's in their refrigerator? What is their disease and what can they do to help that disease? Is it high cholesterol? Is it, like you said, diabetic? Are they taking the proper medications? And this community care paramedic can touch base with their physician and make sure they are. And maybe some of them can be discontinued because the physician doesn't even know they have that many medications at home, right? It could be trips and falls. I mean, that one's leading our nation in what's hospitalizing and killing a lot of our people throughout the nation is trips and falls in their own home, especially when they're home alone.
Walk like a penguin.
walk like a penguin, get rid of throw rugs, right? Making sure that their handrails are secure, making sure that, they have grab bars in certain areas of their home that they might need them, making sure that their kitchen is set up properly and safely so that they're not hurting themselves or falling or, getting pinched, or maybe changing the door swing on a refrigerator. All these different things we can do to help prevent them from needing the 911 system, or needing EMS, or needing a physician, or needing the hospital. And the list can go on, and I know I'm missing a bunch of them, and the paramedics are probably rattling them off right now, the ones that are watching this podcast and listening. But that's where I think this is going to change the game, and I really do believe in my heart that before this trial period's over, this community care paramedic trial period of the next 3 years, we're going to have more community care paramedics in the city of Wausau, and they're going to be changing the game for our citizens and for this community and for our healthcare system.
Now, it would probably only be fair to add that in order for this trial period to exist, there's lots of community support for this. Not only like the Aspirus Foundation is financially contributing to allow this to occur, as well as the Judd S. Alexander Foundation.
Yep.
Those two entities evaluated the impact and felt like this was a worthwhile thing to do. And I agree with you that by the time this is done, I think it will have proven its worth. It's now that the hardest part is getting it up off the ground and getting the right people in the right positions to be able to go out and do those things.
Mm-hmm. And we actually just finished our last interview for this position today. So hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll be the management team will be making a decision on who's going to be offered this position, and we're going to get this off the ground and running here in the next few weeks.
All right. Now, we're coming up to the conclusion of the amount of time we have, but I would just propose that, like as a teaser to the individuals, our next conversation should be about what does it take to convince one's wife to sell your house and buy an old fire station and turn it into a house.
Yeah, now you just found a way to get one more listener, because she's probably going to want to hear this answer, right?
Well, I mean, I know when I would be like, how'd you do this, Jeremy, that you're not willing to provide that answer in a public forum, but
maybe for next time.
I think people would be interested to know that you decided it was a good idea while going back to school to get your master's degree, while applying to be the chief and a new deputy chief. You thought it was a good idea to buy a firehouse.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a lot, and I'm willing to talk about that.
It'll be interesting. The next one, so that's the teaser. We'll see if it makes the cut. Ethan might decide that's not worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, and I think we got to probably explore more jokes and cause some more laughter too.
Well, and instead of just getting over on each other in these conversations, there's a long list of other people that we can just make fun of and talk about their performance.
The list goes on and on.
It does. So I want to take this opportunity. Thanks for coming here for your first podcast. It was our idea, so they will always be filmed here.
Got it.
If you're one of the several 100,000 people that are watching or listening to this, we appreciate your time, and hopefully there was something worthwhile in it for you.
Appreciate you having me.